Thank you, Mayor McCann, City Commissioners. I'm Cleet Saunier, the Director of Public Works and Utilities, and it's my privilege tonight to introduce to you the City's Stormwater Management Consultant, David Hamstra, with Pegasus Engineering. For the past 40 years, David has been involved in planning, designing, and constructing over 1,250 stormwater assignments ranging from comprehensive stormwater master plans to neighborhood drainage improvements altogether. Under David's leadership, Pegasus Engineering has been serving the city's stormwater needs over the past 5 years, assisting city staff during Hurricanes Ian and Milton. Pegasus' efforts to securing critically needed state and federal stormwater improvement grants on behalf of the city has been commendable. Most of our recently completed projects and ongoing projects would not have been possible were it not for Pegasus' involvement in securing this grant funding with key state and federal regulators. David will be presenting the city's stormwater briefing tonight, which will provide an overview of recently completed and ongoing projects since Hurricane Ian, as well as a snapshot of the progress being made with the citywide stormwater improvement program and stormwater master plan. Now, just like similar presentations we provided to you in the past, there's 34 slides in this presentation. So I would ask each of you if you could take note of the slide number, write your question down, and let's come to that at the end once David's completed, and be happy to answer any questions you have. And with that, David, if you'd come up, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. There is a lot, and I'll try not to string this long. I hope to get done in 30 minutes, but we have done a lot. The city has done a lot, and I think we should be able to inform the public, inform the city commission, and as we head into another unfortunate hurricane season ahead of us. So everything's good. Thank you. So the majority of today's briefing will be the current projects, and we will touch upon quickly the grants that are available. That grant list keeps growing and growing, which is great for those who are financially strapped to get things done. And we're going to touch upon quickly the work that Kimley Horn is doing for the city for the Stormwater Master Plan. So we're going to focus on, 14 projects this evening. These are projects that have started during Hurricane Ian through today's current day, which has been 3 years. The projects listed are not in priority. They're not based on cost or the population that serves. They're just a random listing of everything that's been going on for the last 3 years for the city of Winter Springs. We'll start off with Tuscarora Crossings, which has been around for 2 years. We'll lead into the Hurricane Ian grant-funded projects for the creeks and sediment removal. We'll talk specifically about G Creek and Moss Park, which has been recently completed, an update on wetland park improvements, the City Hall drainage improvements right behind this building, East Trade Winds, which was recently completed by Public Works, what's lies ahead for the Dare Run Pond, a recent evaluation we're doing for Northern Way as it interfaces with Bear Creek Estates. Then we're going to lead into a quick update on the 3 Hurricane Ian FEMA-funded projects: acquisition of 1 home, elevation of 3, and flood-proofing of 12 city sanitary lift stations. Circle back to NRCS on the current Milton-funded projects, Torcaso Park improvements, and we're going to wrap things up with the Fairway Oaks relining and sediment removal project. So with that, I'll get started. So for those in the audience that have not heard about Tuscarora Crossings, I'll try to orientate you on the screen. We got the Savoy right off to the left. This is the Seminole Crossing Bridge over 434, and this is what we call as Pond 1. August 31st of 2 years ago, we had a burn failure right at this general location. Had nothing to do with a storm or a hurricane. It was just a random failure that, as we got further into it, appears to be a construction defect. Since that time, we have worked closely with the Water Management District and the city to get this approved and permitted and out for bid fairly soon. This is what it looked like the day after the August 31st failure. It emptied the pond. From talking to the neighbor, literally a matter of hours. It emptied the whole pond out into the wetland and eventually the Lake Jessup. In order to try to bring the pond back into somewhat of a compliance with the water management district, primarily because we're still getting water from the residential area that has pesticides, fertilizers, debris. We couldn't just let the water go unattenuated directly to the wetland, directly to Lake Jessup. So the city hired a contractor of June of last year to kind of put some dirt in there temporarily. It's held up nicely, thank goodness, through Milton, but it is temporary. This will be removed and replaced with what we call a sheet pile wall to make it more stable. The failure happened to occur basically on an own stream bed that crossed the railroad and got to Lake Jessup. And that little old stream was the Achilles heel when it failed 2 years ago. So where are we at this point? The current engineer's estimate is still just a tad above $2 million. We have secured approval from the city back in March of this year. We recently got our permit from St. John's after going back and forth on some wetland issues. On June of this year, we have provided the city a full set of bid documents, which is plans, specs, bid forms, and estimate. And I believe within the next week or two, Holly Quinn and my senior engineer, Greg, will get that thing bundled up and on the street for public advertisement for construction bids. Our goal, obviously, is not to start construction in the summer. That would be the worst time with the rainfall and the hurricane season. Our goal is to start in October or November. This probably will take 9 months, start to finish, with all the regrading and work that's got to be done. But we hope to get the vast majority of it during the dry season, if the weather permits. All right, go back a couple of years with Hurricane Ian. NRCS, which stands for National Resource Conservation Service, which is a federal program for the government. They award grants and funding for things related to erosion, not for flooding. They usually let FEMA come in first. FEMA distributes funding for flooding. Once FEMA's kind of done, NRCS comes in their heels, and then it offers cities and counties financial relief to fix their erosion problems and washouts throughout the cities and counties. So for Ian, we had Bear Creek, G Creek, No Name Creek, Sheola Creek, and Owl Creek. What you see on there, all those little circles and squares, are just basically photographs that were taken when Zulu walked through there right at the event to kind of earmark and tag the problem areas that would be set out for bids later on. And this is just an example. This is G Creek. No Name Creek is parallel to the south, and they kind of merge together and cross 434. Speaking about 434, you may wonder why DOT's been out there for so long at 419 and 434. That culvert crossing that flooded during Ian was significantly impacted by, I will say, tons of sediment that was blocking a vast majority of the pipe. They've been out there for several months, dredging all that material to get out there and fixing the pipe. I hope and pray that moving forward, that will provide a tremendous relief moving forward when needed for G Creek, No Name Creek, and Little Howell Creek as all those converge and cross 434. Besides the debris cleanup, we have what we call sediment removal, and this is a accumulation of sediments as the water contracts and expands at different culvert crossings throughout the city. If you've been out there following a big storm, it looks like a big sandbar that accumulates either upstream or downstream of the culvert crossings. And during Hurricane Ian, we had identified 10 locations, and those were removed by a different contractor. And both the debris removal and the sediment removal for Ian has been closed out. Everything's been submitted as of late 2024. The good news is we were below budget, or the city was below budget, with the money we got from NRCS. So we were able to ask and get additional funding to dredge 5 ponds with 6 outfalls with the Hurricane Ian dollars. And that was appreciated by the city to get that added to the scope of work. The next project involves G Creek at Moss Park. I'll back up on it a little bit. This is Moss Park. Right here, this is the G Creek crossing. During that Hurricane Ian, the outside bank of the creek next to the playground equipment was severely eroded, and RCS stepped up and was able to fund a $750,000 repair job for the creek. Primarily involves a sheet pile retaining wall on the outside of the creek where the water is the highest velocity, a lot of armoring next to that before it crosses the creek. And I'm pleased to say that's been closed out as well. This is before and after photograph. This is where the erosion took place on the outside bank, and this is the sheet pile wall with the hand railing, and what you see below the water, or don't see below the water, is rocks and riprap to protect the base of the canal. Next project is Wetland Park. This has been around for a couple years. I'll explain, there's two different slides on this. We got the top one, is Tuscarora Road, where it crosses the trail. If you've been at the high school pond and cross, there's these large circular concrete, looks like a missile silo next to the trail. Based on where they were located years ago, when that water comes up from the bottom and spills out the top, it goes directly to Michael Blake Boulevard and has been causing localized flooding for several years at that location. The idea is to move those three large diameter structures and move them further south along the trail so the water discharges the heart of the wetland where all the storage is, so the water goes where it was intended to go, to a plan for an existing structure. Now regarding the path, we have two options. One was to stay outside the state-owned trail right-of-way, and one was to go within the trail right-of-way. Staying outside the right-of-way has greater wetland impacts, which has been a problem with the district because there's very limited choices for mitigation banking. If we try to move the structures within the state-owned right-of-way, we have to go through a leasing permission through the state, in which is a very time-consuming process. We're going to engage a dialogue fairly soon with the state, tell them the hardship we're going with the St. John's option of significant wetland impacts, and see if granting a lease would be something the state would support, so we can revise the plans, get the permits secured, and move forward with this project. The bottom half of the image is along Michael Blake Boulevard. We're going to put a very low-profile retaining wall to kind of hold the water back and funnel it to several inlets behind the wall to make sure that water is captured. It doesn't spill onto Michael Blake Boulevard. So just as I suggested earlier, we submitted the application a year ago in September of 2024. There's been several requests for additional information. We've been asking for extensions to try to find the path with the least resistance between the state lease and the Water Management District wetland criteria. Going small scale for a change, this is right behind City Hall. There was a 40 linear feet of a corrugated metal pipe. That's what CMP stands for. It had warranted removal and replacement. The city undertook this small project to go from the inlet into the regional pond, and with a 36-inch HDPE, stands for a high-density polyethylene plastic pipe, which is very durable and doesn't rust and erode like corrugated metal pipe does. Another small project that's been recently completed by Orange County, City of Winter Springs, is the East Trade Winds Road. I do want to thank Commissioner Caruso for being in attendance at the meeting with the homeowners. I think the meeting was very positive with his presence, the city staff and myself. Everybody was basically talking nicely and getting an option on. And so it got constructed, some swales on both sides. Where the homeowner lives at this location, water comes from the east, west, and south and floods their low spot. Kevin and his staff have constructed swales. And I will tell you, I think it was 2 weeks ago Thursday, we had a heck of a storm that happened at night with a lot of rain. I went out the very next morning at 7:30 and the swales are bone dry. So good to see that the water was collected in the swales. I haven't talked to the homeowner to make sure she was okay, but the swales fill up with water. When I went home that night and the next morning they were dry and recovered nicely. Another small-scale project is Deer Run Pond. Before I get started on the control structure, I do want to point out when we got extra money from NRCS, there are two outfall pipes, one in the middle and one in the northwest corner, that we're part of the beneficiary of the unused dollars to go out and remove the sediment sandbars within that pond. So this one was captured under Ian and completed. We are asking for this one to be done under Hurricane Milton, which the state is currently reviewing. But specifically, this project involves modifying the existing control structure, which is the image to the left. There's two things that are warrant an immediate need. There are boards in front of the structure that can be removed and have been removed over the years to manage the lake level, either prior to or during a storm event. There's also been a series of PVC tubes that have been compromised, I guess, to keep the fish from escaping. And so the plan is to remove the boards, put more of a permanent structure in the front, and to lower the top of grades so we don't have to depend on those PVC tubes to provide the same purpose. Not to get engineering, but this is the front view of the structure. We're basically going to bolt a 5-foot gallus plate in the front. We're going to put an orifice in the front of the pond, so as it fills up, it'll draw down through that opening, and this will keep the structure being manipulated or monitored during a storm event. This discharges directly to Howell Creek. We got to make sure a pond of that size doesn't add to the hardship within Howell Creek during a major storm event. The next project is called Bear Creek Estates, and primarily it involves Northern Way at the intersection with Brown Bear Courts. That intersection's had localized flooding for quite a while. The city had asked us to look into the cause of that flooding and what can be done to address it. I'll go first to the slide here, and this may be hard to see. Here's Northern Way on the top. This is Howell Creek. This is Bear Gully Creek. And this is the Bear Creek Estates, or Bear Creek Estates subdivision. They have a series of pipes and inlets that drain the entire community through one very small pond. There's no way that would be built nowadays with the current criteria, but that's what got permitted many years ago. And the Northern Way drainage system right before it crosses the bridge is where the localized flooding occurs. Unfortunately, it's a private system. The city has no drainage easements to get into the existing system in Bear Creek Estates. So the plan is to sever that connection at Northern Way, have our own discharge to Howell Creek after we treat the water, and not rely upon the older system that is not performing to current standards. This is kind of a blow up. This is the intersection of Northern Way. This is the intersection of Constantine Floods. The idea is to sever our existing pipe and build a new outfall to Howell Creek with the installation of a water quality structure so we can collect the beer cans, the cups, the cigarette butts before it goes to Howell Creek, and they will be cleaned up by county staff or city staff moving forward. Now transitioning to Hurricane Ian FEMA grants. The first one involves the acquisition of one home on Holiday Lane that backs up to G Creek. This and the next two, I will say, the good news is the state has approved all three of them. They've been transmitted to FEMA. The agreements are sitting on FEMA's desk. Unfortunately, with all the turmoil going on with FEMA and the current government, it's been slow going to get these agreements off the desk. The good news is that the city did get the agreements approved for the safe room for the police station and for the generator for the Public Works building, but we are still waiting for these next three projects to get approved so you can approve them, sign them, and get things going as far as the flood mitigation efforts. So this is simply an acquisition of the home on Holiday Lane. You'll notice the match in this particular case is a city match because we, the city, will own that piece of property when the agreement, the work is done. The house will be demolished, the utilities will be properly capped, and this property can be turned into, it can stay vacant, it could be a neighborhood park, it cannot serve any future residential construction moving forward. So this will stay city-owned, part of their inventory. They can even build a pond if they want to. Maybe they'll treat some water before it goes to G Creek. The next one is the elevation, physically elevating the structures up a couple feet above the 100-year flood elevation. This too has been approved by the state. This too is sitting on FEMA's desk for approval. 2 of these are sitting in Sheola at the northwest part of the city, right next to Soldiers Creek, and the one at the bottom is within La Hacienda Village. Again, these have been approved. On this one, the match is the homeowners pay the 25% match, not the city, because that property does not belong to us once the homes are elevated. The last Hurricane Ian funded project we're waiting on is the 12 sanitary sewer lift stations that are dispersed throughout the city. The goal of this is to flood-proof them, whether we elevate them to make sure that floodwaters can't get in them. Once the floodwaters enter a lift station, it causes it to shut down. We can have sewage backup in homes. And so that's the goal of this. This has been approved as well. And the city's match moving forward is currently $1.1 million. And the reason I say currently, because it isn't until we actually go out in the street for bids do we know the true city's match moving forward. Back to NRCS, now that we had Hurricane Milton, unfortunately, last year. They have been kind enough to work with the city very closely to afford us additional funding for more creek debris removal, more sediment removal, and since we're below budget again, they're going to allow us to add additional ponds for sediment removal. This time around, we have 7 creeks listed: Sheola Creek, G Creek, No Name Creek, Howell Creek, Bear Creek, Little Howell Creek, at 2 locations, Oak Forest and Winding Hollow. All these have been approved, and Zulu has just completed all these debris removal at the creeks. I think I saw the news the other day. And as soon as they got done and starting to wrap up their paperwork, there was an identified additional tree on G Creek, just north of the power easement. And the NRCS has been kind enough to allow the city to get that reimbursed, to add that after the fact for Zulu to go back out there and remove that tree in G Creek. Similar to Lake Ian or Hurricane Ian, we have 9 locations within the city that have sediment removal. And again, since it was below budget, we were able to add another outfall to be cleaned up for Deer Run Pond, Solary Canal Pond, and another pond in Oak Forest since we came in below budget. Moving forward in the last couple of projects, Torcaso Park, and there's an existing ditch that runs parallel to a multi-use trail. The city would like to enclose that ditch with a pipe for aesthetics, for safety, and that is in the process of being designed by one of the city's consultants. It's been going back and forth on some review comments, and hopefully those can get resolved in the near future, and this could be enclosed moving forward. The last of the 14 projects, and I've gone really quickly for you, Kevin, so the last of the 14 projects is what they call Fairway Oaks. These were things that were on your agenda back, I believe, in May and June and April, that Cathcart Construction has been authorized to do some sediment removal and some pipe replacements. Again, we had another corrugated metal pipe. That's what CMP stands for, and that has been replaced. And then there's also, because of the aftermath of the Milton, there was a large sediment deposition in the pond that got approved to be removed as well. Now, since I was here 5 years ago, the amount of buckets available for funding was pretty limited. It was primarily FEMA, and FEMA kind of swoops in after a major event. NRCS, which has been a great partner for the city. But since that time, there's been other programs moving forth that we may benefit from and to continue to monitor. I'm just going to highlight a few of these. I'm not going to go over every one of them. CDBG is Community Development Block Grant. This is DRs for disaster recovery. MIT is for mitigation. These two are HUD dollars, not FEMA dollars. These are HUD dollars that are given after a storm event. They do have a focus on low to moderate income areas, so sometimes it limits our options within Winter Springs to pursue that funding. Not to go over your head there. Elevate Florida is a brand new program that started after Milton. This was the State's Way, Florida Division of Emergency Management. They decided to take some of the hurricane dollars and set them aside and to basically work one-on-one with the homeowners to either acquire, elevate, or demo and reconstruct their house directly instead of going through the hazard mitigation program. So it is a beta test site. We're not quite sure how well this is going to take traction and work out. We've done a lot of residential mitigation. There's a lot of hand-holding to residents. I fear that may be lost, but I hope the state has enough staff people to walk the residents through the process from start to finish, because when you elevate somebody's house, it can be pretty traumatic, and hopefully they'll be able to provide those resources moving forward. St. John's has provided grants for quite a while, but it's very limited. It's usually $20,000 to $25,000. Usually the juice isn't worth the squeeze on that. We try to look for bigger ones, and other ones are more water quality driven. So these are all on the radar. The city continues to ask us to keep our eyes on these to make sure there's a good match for a future project. To wrap things up, fairly soon, we're going to have Kimley Horn up here presenting the Stormwater Master Plan to the City Commission and to the public. Before I go over these dates, I do want to point out there's a chance they may shift a little bit because we've been waiting for quite a while for a study from the county that captures the majority of the east half of the city. As I mentioned to you all before, Seminole County is undertaking numerous watershed studies throughout the county. They've been very, very beneficial to the city. They finished with Soldiers Creek, G Creek, No Name Creek, Little Hall Creek, Lake Jessup. All those were done last year. And because of that, those were given to the city and turned over to Kimley Horn to kind of earmark projects for the city. However, the Howell Creek, which is a big one, kind of captures the east half of the city. And we really didn't want Kimley Horn to be up here twice with a bifurcated stormwater master plan. So we're really hoping the county can pull through soon with their consultant, provide us the Howell Creek study, and allow us to merge all the work that's already done by Kimley Horn with the results from the Howell Creek study and have a true master plan to present to you either in September or October, maybe as late as in November, depending when that study actually gets in our hand. But going with the original schedule, when we meet on a monthly basis, myself, city staff, and Kimley Horn with Marcus and his staff, they're in the process right now of finalizing the identified drainage projects within all the other watersheds except for Howell Creek this time. They are establishing project costs for each one of those, and they're developing a prioritization program to prioritize these projects within each watershed. The goal originally was to provide the city a draft master plan by the 29th of September, and the plan was to do a stormwater workshop on October 1st. The following week, the final report would be submitted to the city. On October 13th, the city commission meeting, the city would adopt the master plan. And that same day, Raftellus, which is the city's rate study consultant, would present the stormwater rate study presentation. And then the idea was to have everything adopted and in hand by October 27th. And again, city manager's welcome to correct me, but I think these are going to get bumped a little bit based on us continuing to wait for the county. And I hope it's not much longer, but that's where we stand. All right, I went as quick as I could, so we can ask questions and let you all resume your evening business. So,
Well, thank you very much for the thorough information. Open it up to commissioners first.
I'll go.
Deputy Mayor.
I was waiting for ladies, but I'll start with slide 32, 33. City Manager, this is for you. Looking at this presentation and hearing exactly as David presented it, I would rather we have the stormwater rate study at the same time as the workshop or a separate workshop before we get that, because that just is like, hey, here you go with the stormwater plan, and at the commission meeting you get the study. Is that fair? I mean, I don't know what other people think, but that just seems like the cart before the horse in my perspective, because for us to get the workshop, hey, this is everything we need to do, and at a commission meeting to get the presentation of rate study. Shouldn't we have that conversation?
the reason for the delaying, if I can please interject, is Kimley Horn is establishing all the projects and all the costs. The idea was you guys would see that list and see if your concurrence, If you are, then those costs will be given to Raftellus to do the stormwater update. But with
So then
that, I'll,
shouldn't- Right, which I understand, then we should do to me, we should do a second workshop on that conversation. It would just be interesting, because then at a meeting where we're deciding to adopt the master plan, we're also gonna have to adopt the cost of the master plan at the same time. That's how I read that.
no, the master plan was originally planned to be approved and adopted on October 13th with all the costs in there and prioritization. And then Raftellus would do their initial stormwater presentation, and then the following meeting would finalize that for y'all to adopt the increased rate.
I think that it would, on this document, if you're on page 31, if you scroll down to 31, it says rate study presentation October 13th, and then it says rate study presentation to October 27th. Maybe that's what's
Well,
confusing.
well, it's not confusing. What I'm saying is, when you say to me, hey, this master plan is gonna cost you $10 million. Okay, we can get all of that for there, but on the same day that you're gonna say approving this project, we're also theoretically approving the cost of those projects. We have to theoretically approve the rate study regardless. Whereas if we find out how much it costs, and also then find out how much, without having to vote, how much the rate study is, then we can look and see,
Without adopting.
without having to adopt anything and make decisions here, without having all, to me, it's all the information. When we would be missing a portion of the information is, yes, we like all these projects, how much does it cost the residents over time? City manager.
Understood, yeah.
So I don't know how we work that out, and I don't know if it's to slow things down, but it's just getting all the information.
Yeah, I think with, particularly with the rate study, they'll be looking at it as a phased, probably a phased approach recommendation over multiple fiscal years of some kind of rate. But yeah, depending on prioritization of where those projects are completed, would also tie into the rate as a whole, so.
But to me, all I'm asking is if we could do it as workshops instead of at commission meetings to flush it out.
Sure.
Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Sure. That way we can really take our time and dive into it, because it will be a lengthy, that's a lot of information and really has big
Right.
impacts.
And I know how hard staff's working, I know everybody's doing it. All I'm asking is a little slower, not months slower, but just,
Yeah, time to tear it apart. Okay.
so.
Anything else?
Yep. Slide 27, 26 and 27, which is the debris removal project and sediment removal projects. David, remind me, sediment removal starts now, or has sediment removal been going?
So debris removal just got completed by Zulu, and they're starting the month of August with the sediment removal for Hurricane Milton.
Okay.
Just to add to that, there's a sediment pre-construction meeting on Wednesday. Then we'll have that. So the plan was really by mid-August to get going on the sediment removal
Only at the culverts.
Right. Appreciate it.
at the crossings, yeah.
So, as residents have been kind of watching this, David, have we been behind Zulu checking to make sure, or city manager, have we been behind them? Because I keep getting calls from residents, especially on No Name Creek and Gee Creek, saying they haven't seen anybody out there, or sending me pictures saying, is this what we're doing? So have we been behind them, watching them to make sure that the work is done? City manager, David?
I can't speak on behalf of Public Works that they're literally behind them walking. I do know the government, NRCS does require a final inspection. I will tell you that things continue to fall, unfortunately. I'm glad the one big one that was brought forth, NRCS was willing to kind of slide that in and not wait to the next storm, which I hope we don't get another one. But I'll see if there's a way we can safely, with staff, walk it and get what we can for each creek segment to make sure that it was properly taken care of. So,
Real
Appreciate
quick,
it.
so
Yeah, they
That's me.
film first, couldn't they film after? I don't know.
I was just gonna say, part of that requirement that you just spoke of is that doing a video, a walkthrough like they did,
they're supposed to do a before and after video, yep.
that'll show everything then.
Okay,
Yeah, good point.
go ahead.
As well as photo documentation.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead.
Commissioner Crusoe? Ladies, anything? I think, I'll tell you, I guess a little bit of commentary and some facts, maybe to remind people of, is, we all know Hurricane Ian changed everything in Winter Springs. I've said it many times, that we have wastewater treatment plants that are our number one priority. We are closing in on that project, and completion dates are starting to be on the horizon now. We're moving forward. But stormwater will be an issue that this community will face for decades to come. It has been an underfunded utility that we have not done enough for. Since Hurricane Ian, we've spent millions and millions and millions of dollars getting work done. Although some of these projects were not the first, these are massive moves, and I think we're finally understanding the importance and setting these priorities. We will need, look, we have, 3 stormwater employees and 1 supervisor. That's not going to be enough to manage and keep going back through and checking for fallen trees and doing these things. We're going to have to really continue for decades to make this a priority. There are other massive projects that are not included here. If you drive down, if you leave City Hall and you're headed westbound on 434 and you hit the 419 split and you see all the big backhoes and all of the work being done under 434, they're removing tons and tons of sediment there. But because although the city's been lobbying for that work for a long time, it actually falls under the state and the county because that's their property. But that one project will have a massive impact on G Creek. And anyone who lives on the south side of 434 will see a staggering difference. Would you agree, for what your knowledge? Am I making my
As long as I've been out there, as much dirt I've seen removed, it should definitely be a benefit.
It absolutely should. I'm encouraged that we're going to continue moving the needle forward. For those residents that do live on ponds, this is a significant work that's been years in the making, but it's a significant movement. But we still have to decide how we're going to handle the removal of sediment in ponds, of the 73 ponds in the city, and who's going to help pay for that. Or private ponds, do they pay for it? What's our city, how do we match? How do we contribute? How do we do things? It's a heavy lift that will, again, take years of continuing to stay focused. But we also have to fund these projects. We've been very, very fortunate with our partners and all of the different government agencies that Mr. Hamstra showed us. We've been very, very fortunate. But at some point, we're going to have to kind of support ourselves and live by ourselves, kind of like a kid moving out of the house. At some point, we're going to have to own these issues, and we're going to have to make difficult decisions and have the staff and the funds to continue doing it. We owe that to residents. Safety of our homes and has to be number one. The 350 homes, roughly, that were flooded during Hurricane Ian, we have to do our part to ensure that never happens to our neighbors again. It's critical. It's going to be painful. It's going to be a lot of work, but we have to keep moving that needle forward. Thanks for the opportunity of the commentary.
Well, I'll give you peace of mind, and I'm not going to steal Marcus's thunder, but they are also looking at staffing and equipment, not just drainage projects, so.
Yeah, equipment, we're going to need more staff and more equipment. Yeah. We had a conversation with the city manager about that today. So, thank you. If there are no further questions, Mr. Hamstra,
Yes,
thank
thank
you
you all
again
for your
the
time.
partnership.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.